Alright, in this video we're going to take a look at starting our cottage floor plan model, and we're going to start with the main floor of the floor plan. We'll come back and we can work on the porches, the front and the back porches at another time. So to begin, let's make sure we're still in layer 0. And as you can see right now, I've got my DWG reference. You can see what layer it's on, and it's locked. If we look a little bit closer, you can see it's already been elevated to the 4-foot rough floor elevation. This way we can use the reference to both push and pull up or down. Okay, so what we want to do is start with the floor, and what we're going to use, you can see here, notice that with the layer called XREF here, if I look through alphabetically, you can see here, if I turn it off, the whole reference goes away. But now I could also use the AutoCAD layers here that you can see below, the layers named with $. Here you can see you can manage the detail, right? So this might help you when you need to trace around certain entities. All right, for the moment we'll leave it like this, and as we continue, let's make sure we're in layer 0, and I'm going to start first with a rectangle. You can use the line tool, it doesn't really matter because we are tracing and it's a rectangular area. All right, we got right angles everywhere. So here what we'll want to do is we're going to use the base wall outline here for the main floor. Okay, this is how the foundation would line up with the structure. These two outer lines here represent the finish. So starting on layer 0, if I start at one corner and then go to the opposite corner, again I want to just snap to the outer edge of that base wall, and then I should have something that looks like this. Again, we're trying to build this whole building envelope as a system of components. Okay, so our main floor here is going to be a component. Now if I turn off the XREF layer, you can see this is the only geometry that I have in my SketchUp. And what I need to do here is I need to show the 4-foot elevation, so I can use push. And what I'll do is I'll push down, and you'll see down here in the bottom right you can do a numeric distance, or you could simply snap to 0, right, the origin there. Now once I've pushed the floor, I can switch back to selection mode. If I triple click, I select all faces and edges, then right click and make that into a component. Since this is going to be my main floor, I can name it that, and then I also want to make sure that I replace the selection with the component. Once I've done that, you can see that it's still on layer 0, but now I want to move it to the appropriate layer. And of course we created so many different layers here. You might add more layers depending on your purposes or your needs. And so if you just keep it as simple as possible, we can just put it onto floors. You may want to have like front porch, back porch, again depending on the level of detail and your organization, but we can come back to that. So right now I just have the floor. Okay, now if I turn on the XREF again, you'll notice that if I go to the floor layer and I turn that one off, now I just have the XREF. And I would advise you, as you are building the model, I would advise you that this would be good practice, right? You want to focus on what you're doing. You're building the model from scratch. So you don't want to have all this information obscuring what you're doing. Of course, sometimes you'll need to have it for reference, but keep in mind you can adjust the visibility of your entities just by turning on or off the layers. Okay, so the reason why I turned it off is now I'm ready to do the exterior walls. All right, so again I'm still on layer 0, and once again we are following the floor plan edges, but now I want to draw your attention to this is that what we're going to show the finish, right? We're looking at this from the outside. So here, what we want to take a look at is the overall thickness of our wall. Now, we could, for example, make multiple components, right? Maybe one component is just the base wall. Maybe another component might be the outer finish, and then another still might be the inner finish, right? That's a lot of complexity. All we're going to try to do here is just show the whole thickness of the model so that we could punch through holes to place our windows and doors. Now, you only need to do this if you're going to create both an interior and exterior model. So first, let me show you this. If we're going to build just a simple exterior model, this is all you'll have to do for your walls. So let's take a look at that first. Still working with layer 0. If I'm just doing the exterior, what I could do is this. Trace only the outer edge. Okay, only the outer edge. Don't worry about any penetrations into the wall. Okay, so there's that. Now remember also we have interior walls, right? But if we're just doing the basic exterior model, all right, what we can do now is use push-pull, pull this surface up 9 feet. Now what we're only looking at here is the exterior finish. Okay, this is all you would have to do to walls so that you can still place doors and windows. Okay, this is just for an exterior, a very basic exterior model. And just to show you very quickly as an example, if I took a look at my components here, and again I'm looking at my cottage components, okay, my cottage components here. And for example, here's one of the doors, all right? You can see that when I place it into the wall, it already cuts an opening into the wall. And same thing with my windows. Okay, if I take a look at a window, if I just place the window into the wall, it cuts the opening into the window. So this would be one of the easiest ways to create an exterior model, right? I would still make the walls into its own component and then continue building the rest of the model. However, for this series of videos, we're going to take a look at both the interior and exterior model. So, if we were going to do that, let me undo all of this. Not only would you be tracing the outer edges, but again, you'd have to separate interior and exterior walls, right? So the next thing I would do here would be to draw the boundary of the inside finish of the exterior wall, right? So from here, and again you might use pencil if your wall jogs or changes direction and is not square or rectangular, but this one is, so I could come all the way out here to the opposite side, and then when I turn off my XREF layer, okay, you can see those two edges. What I would do now is remove the inside plane just to reveal the full thickness of the exterior wall. So this would be the structure plus the interior and exterior finishes. As a SketchUp model, you'll be able to paint these different surfaces to represent the different materials separately. And to finish this, what I would do is push-pull up the wall to the plate height, in this case 9 feet. Now, again, I would triple click to select all the walls, right click, and make it into a component. All right, here I'll call this exterior walls. Replace the selection with component and create. Okay, now if we take a look at what we've got so far, we've got our floor, main floor, and exterior wall, right? Notice how the exterior wall, right, the finish, overhangs just a bit on the foundation wall there, right? Which would also be the platform or elevated floor. Okay, it's all integrated into one component. Now, what we're going to have to do in order to show any openings here is we're going to have to punch holes. But before I do that, let's go ahead and take a look at the interior walls as well. So far, I've just traced the outer walls, made a component. You can see the component right now. It's called exterior walls, and it's on layer 0. I'm going to switch that. Now, remember, here I just have a layer called walls, and I've added since a layer for interior and for exterior. So you might want to update your layer list for that. So this will be on the exterior wall layer. Again, what's the advantage? Well, here I can turn off anything that I'm not working with, such as the exterior wall. I have the interior wall on, and if I turn on again my XREF, now I can use the line work for the interior walls. And so this is how I would recommend you do this. Take a look, make sure you can identify what is interior, right? And it might help if you like, if your layers in AutoCAD are adjusted, right? You can start to see what is on the interior walls or exterior walls. But I think the line work is simple enough that you can just simply trace it, okay? So once again, on layer 0, this time I'm going to use a pencil, and I'll show you why. So as I come in, okay, notice that, remember, we already traced this part of the structure as part of the exterior wall component, right? So what you'll do is merely trace on the opposite side of that, right, the boundaries of what would be the interior walls. So as I proceed here, let's not get lost. We can zoom in and zoom out anytime. So you can see here's one complete wall. Forget about the openings. Try to imagine, right? Here's the wall. I could turn back this way. Okay, there's that part right there. And you could always use zoom extents and come back, and you'll notice how I'm just following the contours of the bathroom now. And you could also do this with a bunch of rectangles, right? So all I'm doing is just tracing around here. And you'll start to see, once you start closing, you'll start to see the solid fills. And notice, if I use rectangle, okay, let's take a look at it from the top view, right? This way you can see how the rectangles would work. So for example, here, I zoom back a bit, you know, if I want to do this wall, again, I can go from here, right, all the way across to there. And this is how I'll be connecting all of the walls. So just tracing the boundaries, finish to finish. Just like that. Okay, don't worry about those openings. We're going to come back to that. Now look at this. In this situation here, you could just go right back to line and tracing. Let's go all the way over here. Then come back across and follow the contour. Right? Now you can see here, all I need to do is make an opening, and I could do that again with a rectangle from inside to inside. Okay? Now, all I need to do is remove this inside area, and there you can see these are the solid walls that I will be able to pull up, right? If you look here, okay, I'm missing some outlines, right? You can see I have the outline here, but I'm missing the outline over here. So again, I can come back with my pencil, trace. There, you see that? And then you could remove, and this is what you have so far, right? Now, let's turn off the XREF temporarily. All right, just so you can see. And maybe you'll notice the seams, right? It doesn't matter that they're there, but if you want to push-pull everything all at once, just get rid of the seams on the insides. And then that way you can pull all of the walls all at once. Right? Because that's just one big surface. Okay? So here you can see if I use push-pull, again, I just click on the surface, pull up. Again, you want to pull it up to the ceiling height, right? 9 feet. So, this is going to be a component all by itself. Triple click to select all faces and edges. Right click, make component. Make sure you replace selection with component. And you could call this interior walls. All right, what do we have so far? So, come back again. You could turn on your floors. Take a look at your walls interior and walls exterior, right? This is what we have so far. Now, you know, again, your approach can vary here. It doesn't have to be one way or the other. I'm just trying to present the most efficient way to build this. But let's say if you wanted to, before you start building the rest of the doors and windows, if you wanted to go ahead and build the roof, right? The complete envelope. And then we could start penetrating the envelope. So, for example, in this case, if you recall, we've got a porch that sticks out. Let's turn on that XREF again. Right? Now here, what we want to take a look at is the extent of the roof, right? And at this point, we might need to see our roof layer. All right, now we're ready to talk about the roof. We're actually going to use a plugin to help us with the roof. We're going to start designing a craftsman style roof for our cottage. So one of the first things we want to do is we want to outline as a plane the area that the roof will cover. And separately, using the settings of the plugin, we can define what the overhang for the eave will be. All right, so here's one way to start. Again, we're still in layer 0. I'm going to start with the rectangle tool. I'm going to start from one corner of the exterior walls to the opposite corner. I will double click to select that face and edges, right click and make that into a component. I'll call this the roof plate and make sure I replace the selection with the component. Now, once I've done that, here's the other thing. You'll notice that we actually have an 8-foot extension from the wall to produce a porch. So now if I double click to edit the component, I can select the edge, and then with the move tool, what I'll do is select the edge and move along the green axis and just type in 8 feet. So that represents the roof plate line, and in this case the plane, and we'll use this with our plugin to create the roof. So what we'll do here is we'll select the face. You need to select the front and the back edge that represents the gable. Okay, I go to my plugins here and then I use Instant Roof Pro. Okay, this is what we're using. I want to make roof, and here I can start with the craftsman style roof. We're going to edit the fascia settings and rafter settings here, so click yes for those, then click OK. Now the first set of settings here, what we want to do is we want to adjust the slope to 712. We are going to add eaves. All our eaves here are going to be 1 foot 4 inches. So we'll put in 1 foot 4 inches, and we're going to make them plumb cut boxed in. Now the fascia height and fascia thickness here, I guess you can play around with, but for right now here, we'll set up our fascia height of 8 inches, 2 inches thick. For our fascia trim, we'll click yes. And for now, I'm just going to leave the defaults, okay? Now, again, if we understand the roof construction method and members, lumber members that we're using, we can actually use these value boxes to input the actual dimensions, right? To have more realistic representation. Any of these value boxes below here, these are for roofs with multiple slopes, such as the barn gambrel here. Okay, so we don't need to edit anything below this line. Click OK, and now we can define the hip and rafter parameters. Again, here what you're looking at includes the hip and rafter lumber member dimensions. So especially if you're going to expose the soffit, you're going to want to show the hips and the rafters, and you could define the dimensions here for those. Okay, so if you look here at rafters, you can see we're going to show those, and you can see here we're using 6 by 3.5 with 2-foot spacing. The only thing I would tell you here is let's make sure that these are 16 inches on center. Okay, and that's about the only change you need to make there. Click OK, and then you're going to be prompted to create this as a new style. Now, if you like your style and you want to use it in other designs, you'll click yes, and you'll simply give it a name, right? So you could call it Craftsman Cottage or something like that, and click OK. Now, what you'll see is the basic roof structure here. We still need to edit somewhat, because you'll notice that in the front we've got some exposed rafters, but in actuality what we would have here is we would build out a soffit, because we would still have our joist coming across our roof there overhead over the porch. And so what we could do is, you'll notice that I still have highlighted the roof plate plane, and what I want to do is I want to make sure I can trace a line from this intersection all the way across the face of the building to the opposite side to create a seam in that plane. And what that'll let me do is, using push-pull, it'll let me just select this face, okay, this face, to pull it down. Alright, now you'll notice right now so far we haven't been talking about materials. You'll notice one light side and one dark side, right? Let me undo this. You'll notice it's light or dark here, and basically what you're looking at is either the front face or the reverse face. Okay, you'll notice that if I right click over it, that I can reverse the faces. Now you're seeing the front face here, right? You always want the front face to face your eyes. The back face is not going to have any material. So here now, when I pull it, you can see it looks like the light face now, and that could function as our soffit there. Now we have a couple more things. We want to show a finish here, and if we exit the component temporarily, you'll notice that the entire roof is one large component, right? And you can see, since I was working in layer 0, when I made the component, it's still on layer 0. So if we just move the entire roof to the roof layer, now you'll notice I also have the roof metal layer, and this is going to be like the roof finish. But first, let's just put the entire roof on the roof layer, and let's re-examine it. Okay, what was created? You'll notice here, if I double click, okay, it's actually consisting of multiple components, right? Take a look at the outermost component, right? This would represent the sheathing on top of which we will add our finish. In order to add our finish, what we need to be able to do is select the faces and edges. We're going to be using the standing seam, so here what we want to do is double click to edit the component. Make sure we can select the faces. Once we have a face selected, we can go over here to our plugins using Instant Roof Pro. We're going to add a roof detail. And here, from our selection, we're going to use metal standing seam. And just click OK. Now we can't really adjust the spacing here of the seams. That's fine. If we wanted to, we could start modifying this component, either removing seams to show greater spacing or adding more seams to show smaller spacing. Let's just use the defaults right now. We're trying to create just a very generic model to give you a good overall impression of the dimensions of the model and the physical relationships. So once again, if I turn to the other side, if I just select the face, plugins, Instant Roof Pro, add roof details, you can see there's metal standing seam. Click OK. And then exit the component. Now again, we're not talking about any kind of material modification, not just yet. And for the moment, let's say we'll stop right here, and in the next video we'll take a look at adding doors and windows, both interior exterior walls, adding the front porch and the rear porch, including the floor, stairs, and railings and columns. Okay? And then in the next series we'll talk about enhancing the model with materials.